ready to get started? My name is Tim Radney. I'm a partner at Lynchpin People, and I run the Columbus, Georgia SQL Users Group, so about 90 miles south of here. Today's topic is getting core tasks done with the SQL DBA Bundle. So I want to start by asking how many of you today use any of the components of the DBA Bundle? SQL Compare, SQL Backup Pro. Really awesome tools. My day-to-day job is a system DBA. So I don't do a whole lot of database development. I have a team that does that. But I am responsible for rolling code changes into production. Definitely responsible for all the backups, query tuning, things like that. So for me, a lot of these tools are part of my day-to-day job. They enable me to get things done much more efficiently, much more reliable, less errors. So let's talk about what makes up the DBA bundle. So the SQL DBA bundle contains 7 key tools that support, core DBA tasks. It makes it easier for me to manage my backups, to monitor change, deploy code, and monitor our servers. So what is the DBA bundle? The SQL Backup Pro, SQL Monitor, SQL Compare Standard. There is a difference between the Pro. SQL Data Compare, SQL Pro, SQL Multi Script, and SQL Doc. How many have ever worked with SQL Doc? That tool is awesome. It's like I had that tool and really had not played with it a whole lot. It's just kind of included in this package deal. I was really all about SQL Compare. The SQL Prompt. SQL Prompt is the one tool out of this kit that if I worked at a company and I didn't supply it, I'd be spending my kids' money buying that tool. So let's talk about each one. SQL Backup Pro. This one, I know several of you use SQL Backup Pro. It's an awesome tool. Creates compressed, secure, and verified backups. The centralized management feature is reasons that several companies buy just for that centralized management. High performance compression to create smaller and faster SQL Server backups. A 250-bit AES encryption. I'll talk about that in just a moment. And then the store validations can be scheduled and can include the DBCC check DB so that you can further verify your backups. Now, how many in the room have SQL 2008 Standard Edition or below in your environment? Most hands. So not all of us have SQL 2008 Enterprise and above. So this tool, just from the compression standpoint, is very valuable to us. SQL 2008 Enterprise and above, you have built-in compression. That's kind of nice. You get that with the Enterprise feature. But SQL Backup Pro has 4 levels of compression, where you got one with SQL Server database engine. From all the studies that I've done using SQL Backup Pro versus SQL Server native compression, the ratio of about the level 2 compression for Backup Pro is about equals to SQL Server engine. But then you've got level 3 and level 4. Now the higher compression rate that you get, the more CPU it's going to take, the longer it's going to take to back up. But is anybody backing up their production databases to, say, Azure or to some off-site storage where the network comes into play, or it's not on the local LAN? And that's becoming more and more common with the Amazon EC2 and Azure, or just shipping your files off to a remote data center through some small VPN connection. So in that case, if your backup takes a little bit longer to run, but you're able to get an extra 10 to 15% compression rate, maybe worth it. And with native SQL, you can't do that. You can't fine-tune and tweak the compression rate. Anyone in the room deal with healthcare or financial data? Do you encrypt your backups? Okay, some nodded yes, some nodded no. If you don't have TDE encryption enabled within SQL Server, there's really not many other options without a third-party tool to encrypt those backups. my SAN admins, my network admins, my system engineers have this right on the network called domain admin or enterprise admin, where they're gods, and I'm not, and that really irritates me. But they have no access to my SQL Server, no rights within SQL Server. So they're not sysadmins. They may have data reader within some app that they have. But back in the days of SQL 2005 and 2000, when local admins were SAs, they think they're still, my sysadmins still think they have that, or system engineers, when they don't. So they theoretically don't have access to the data, right, with 2008 and above, because my domain admins are no longer sysadmins. However, they have access to backups, and they're just sitting on a network share or sitting on local disk. So they can download Developer Edition, restore that database. It's not encrypted, and they have full access to all the data. Kind of a scary thought. So bring that up in your next audit meeting. But with this tool, it's just a checkbox, or it's just a couple extra commands in the backup script to encrypt. And the backup key, the encryption key, is encrypted. So it's some hieroglyphic looking kind of number. So nobody can just take that. You can't take that and turn around and use it in the restore script. You actually have to know the password to restore the database. So even if you have this canned script in a job, it's clear text, it's encrypted, and it's not the same algorithm for doing the restore. So you're still protected there. So for that reason alone, even though my PCI environment is firewalled off, it's very secure, I've got SQL 2008 R2 Enterprise Edition in that environment, so I can compress for free. I've already paid for it. I've still got this tool installed just for the encryption capability. So very, very nice feature. The centralized management, a buddy of mine, they use this because they have 100 servers that they manage, and they want that centralized management within the tool. Anyone that uses Backup Pro used the central management, or the centralized management console. It's kind of nice. My environment, because I'm dealing with multiple different domains and firewalls and all this, I don't really get to take advantage of that feature as much as I would like to. But from the encryption, the restore validation checks, and the compression, because my name is Tim Radney, and I still support SQL 2000. Very large SQL 2000 databases. To me, anything over a terabyte is a VLDB. Others will debate me that's dealing with the petabytes and what. It's big, and I got to back it up, and I got to back it up frequently, and this thing is the only thing that allows me to back it up in less than a day. If my backups take more than a day, I have a problem. So what other kind of cool tools are in the DBA toolkit? SQL Monitor. Anyone use SQL Monitor for your environment? Thank you. Very cool tool. There's a lot. If y'all attended SQL Saturdays or the past summit, so you know that there's a lot of people that operate in the space of overall monitoring Big Brother of your environment. What is absolutely cool about SQL Monitor is it being able to automatically send alerts when issues arise. We all get those. We all get alerts, right? In the form of some customer calling, telling you that something's broke. Being a little bit more reactive, so you get a text, you get an email that tells you, hey, the system ran out of drive space, or SQL Server Service is offline, SQL agents failed, a job failed, corruption occurred, whatever the monitors are that you have set up. You'll be notified, hopefully before that customer has the issue, picks up the phone, calls your help desk, gets routed back through you. So by the time they get to you, you say, oh yeah, we're already aware of it, we've got it fixed, or we're in the process, here's the ETA. You get to sound a little bit more professional than, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that the server's been offline for half an hour. So it's kind of cool. To me, the most important part is the historical data. So if you're not monitoring it, you can't really measure it. I know nobody in the room has ever gotten that call that says, hey, I know it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but at 11 o'clock this morning, we were having slowness on this server. Great, appreciate the heads up. Next time, maybe give me a call when it's happening so I can jump on the box and see what's happening. Y'all get those?
All the time.
Right. Now, the all the time comment. Do you have a baseline? You have monitors going so you can see what the disk looked like at that time and what queries were running and those system metrics? If you do, that's great. I do on most of my critical systems. And what's fun is when they tell me that the system was slow. And I get to go back and show them, because I love using Snagit. And send them, and I'll do the arrows and highlight. But I showed them that, okay, you said at 11 o'clock there was a problem, but all of my metrics, my KPIs that I'm monitoring and being measured off of, look exactly the same as they did at 8 a.m. and at 4 p.m. when you're calling me and you're saying that everything is fine. So from my perspective, it's not me. But I tell you what, I'll still dig in. I'll review some logs, I'll keep looking, but from a first glance, these 20-something things that I'm being measured off of, that determine my pay raise, are good. But let's keep digging. But for now, you may want to go ahead and queue up the storage engineer, the network engineer, some other people to kind of deflect a little bit, and then you get to dig in. But if I don't have this historical data, I have no clue if I'm better or worse than I was yesterday or earlier this morning. So that's the key. I mean, this is your out. It always displays the top 10 most expensive queries for each database. I'm fortunate that right now I have a boss and a CTO that understands what this means. That the top 10 most expensive queries doesn't mean that I got 10 problems. I love the analogy of, anyone ever watch the Olympics? Like the 500 or 400 meter race? Was the guy that came in last slow? Is he a horrible athlete? He's still the fastest in his country. And 1,000 times faster than I could ever be. So if I've already tuned, you're always going to have the worst performing, but it may be good enough. So the fact that it's always displaying the 10 worst, get it through to the people that also are going to have access to the dashboard, that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes it's good enough, it's fast enough. So I always like that. Yes, sir.
When you display the 10 most expensive queries, normally using DMVs, those are measured from the last time the database was started. Is there any way, I want to see the 10 most expensive in the last 24 hours?
The way that this is constantly collecting, that's a great question. One of the red shirts out there that probably can tell you much better than I. Because it's collecting this, that's probably all cache stored in the SQL Monitor database so that you can look at trends over time. Because you're exactly right. If it's just pulling from the DMV, it's only what's most recent or since the last restart. But is that collecting and storing from the restart so that you can trend it over a longer period of time? That's a great question. Custom metrics. So this thing out of the box has a lot of nice things. You may have your own custom alarms, alerts that you're needing to measure off of. So you can create those. If you can write it, you can create that custom alarm. And you can also get to look at real-time data. Some of the tools in the market, they'll tell you, they're aggregating daily, and so today you're looking at what happened yesterday. It's not a real-time view into the system. This is real-time. We'll show a demo of SQL Monitor. Because of the shop I work at, we have another tool that we use for our baseline. The only time I really get to play with it is on SQLServerCentral.com. Anyone ever go to that site? I love the site. I love contributing to the question and answer section. And I like that better than the forums. Because forums, you get into a group and you kind of ask your question and people can sometimes be rude to you. But on the ask.sqlservercentral.com, you get to post your own question up to 2,000, I think it's either 2,000 characters or 2,000 words. I mean, it's a lot. And even then, if you run out of room, you start leaving comments to your own question to finish saying what you had to say. And it's all about you. It's your particular question, not being folded and fitted into a general forum topic. And then people all over the world contribute and answer and so forth. But anyway, the thing about that site is SQL Monitor monitors SQLServerCentral.com. And so the other Grant, who was up here before, he likes to wear kilts to the summit. So this is kind of the website's way of lifting up their kilt and letting you see under the hood of what's going on. You can click in the top right corner, roll it back, and you're looking at SQL Monitor real-time live for SQLServerCentral.com. And yeah, the site, I mean, Redgate hosts the site, but another company kind of donates the space and whatnot, so we're not in a high-tiered support model. You know, it's free. So sometimes it has some issues and maybe down. And you know, as techie folks, the first thing we do is we go and we roll back SQL Monitor, we start looking, we start emailing the site admin saying, here's your problem, you need to go fix it. So it's nice that it's there, but it's not so nice for the people supporting it, because then they have people like us that get to look at the tool and tell them what the problem is. But we'll look at that in a few minutes. Change management. With SQL Compare and SQL Data Compare, you can deploy database changes quickly and with confidence. That's the key there, the confidence. If somebody tells you that, hey, we have this code updated in dev, and we need for you to roll it to QA, with a few clicks within a tool, you can capture all those changes, all the stored procedures, the views, the table structures, even the data that's different between the dev tables or in schema and production. And it scripts all that out for you. So I don't have to rely on one of my developers to write the DDL statement for me to run, and it may or may not be correct. They may or may not try to slip in some additional change in that code. Say, oh no, we checked this out from SourceSafe, and here you go. If they added a couple new tables or another view, they have it in prod or in dev. I capture the change, I deploy that to QA. I've got my code, it's checked into source control. When they sign off on it, then I roll that to production. I'm not having to write code, I'm not having to script things out, I'm not having to rely on the task and script objects and so forth. This tool will do it for me. The other nice thing is when someone will tell me that, well, it worked in QA, but it didn't in production. And I go and I look and I realize that they keyed in some different data. It's kind of like a big brother. I can prove things quickly without having to write a bunch of scripts. I mean, anyone, I know everybody in the room has had to compare data between one database and another or a table and pull out the differences. And if you got 28 columns wide and you have, it's a pain. This tool does it. And it's a few clicks. Just don't tell anybody you got the tool. Make them think that you spent 8 hours doing it instead of 8 seconds. So we'll generate your T-SQL scripts to update one database to match the schema and contents of another. And drastically speed up the deployment of new database schema updates because you're not having to go and compare. The tool will do it. Eliminates mistakes when migrating database changes because you don't have the human element in there. We can all right-click, script, boom, and execute. I'm not going to say it's impossible to mess that up, but you're having a bad day if you mess that up. You can also fix problems by restoring damage or missing data. So if you're doing a data compare and you realize that, well, I'm missing 22 rows from here to there, you can literally click deployment and roll those changes from dev into production, given that your machine that you're doing this on can see both at the same time. SQL prompt. Yes, sir?
Does Compare have API?
Don't know. I've never looked into that. So does it have an API that you can just plug into and pull directly out of? Probably not, but I know like SQL Source Control, with its TFS and Subversion plugins, may have that.
So SQL Compare does have an API. You can run it from a command line. It's relatively straightforward.
Awesome. Good. Yes. It's always nice to have a red shirt from the room. SQL prompt. This is my absolute favoriteest of all tools. So we all got introduced to IntelliSense with SQL 2008 when it started annoying us trying to guess what we were doing and it was always wrong. Okay? SQL prompt is, I guess, what Microsoft was trying to emulate poorly. Where this is code completion and customizable code snippets. So as you're starting to type a database schema or a table, it will, based on what you're typing in the letters, pull up a list of the next columns or tables or database, so that within keystrokes, you don't have to type out these long phrases and commands and stored procedures. We all know select star is bad, right? We don't want to do that. But you've got 28 columns in this table. You don't want to have to look up and type 28 different columns. So I'll still type select star in my table. I'm going to go back to that star and it tells me, hey, press space to list all the columns. Okay, and then boom, they're all there. It's quite nice. Anyone deal with these really rude people that say certain keywords have to be capitalized and everything can't be on one line and it's got to be formatted a certain way and your commas have got to be in the front versus in the back and your joins have got to, I mean, this whole formatting code, is that a problem in your shop? Right. This thing, just a couple of keystrokes and it formats your code for you. And you can tell it what your preferences are, whether you want commas in the front, in the back, various things. Anyone have to write a lot of stored procedures? Developers in the room? A few? Do you always have to comment and you have some code block at the top that says this stored procedure was created by so-and-so at this time for this purpose and context, and at least some standard little part of code in your sprite? Well, if you do, you can create a snippet. So you just type a couple of letters and that whole block comes into the stored procedure or query window. So it saves a lot of time and effort. Multi Script. Anyone use Central Management Server? CMS? Couple? What's the other? So Central Management Server allows you, back in the SQL 2000 days, so you could register all these servers. So every time you opened Enterprise Manager, you had them listed out. It's quite nice. With Management Studio, you open Management Studio and you get to start over, clicking Connect, and adding all these. With CMS, you could go and create a Central Management Server, register all these servers in there, and you could group them by whatever development, production, version of SQL, however you want it. It also allowed you to right-click on that folder and say New Query, and query every database in that folder, or excuse me, every server in that folder. So it's a very nice tool, but it has a major Achilles heel. You can only use Windows authentication. I have multiple domains, and there's not trust between all of my domains. I have some servers that are in such isolation, they're not in a domain, they're in a work group because they're kind of standalone behind a firewall, that I can only use SQL authentication to get to it. So I can't successfully manage all of my environment from a single tool and be able to deploy code to it. Anyone else use SP Who is Active by Adam McCann? He does regular updates to that. And it would be a pain to have to go and run that on every single server when you support hundreds of them. With Multi Script, it uses SQL authentication and Windows authentication. So as long as I have firewall access, I can connect to my entire environment using Multi Script. It has a lot of the same benefits of Central Management Server for the querying databases in parallel, except this one will aggregate results for analysis. I don't get that with CMS. You can reduce repetitive administration. You can edit queries fast. It has a really cool interface to it. But the key difference between this and Central Management Server for my shop is that I can use SQL authentication. If it wasn't for that, I've got other tools. At the same time, my new Central Management Server is in SQL 2012. Now remember I made the comment I still support SQL 2000. Anyone ever tried to connect to SQL 2012? 2000? Been successful? Tell me the trick, please. So for that reason, this is a very valuable tool for me in my day-to-day job. And fortunately, it came with a bundle. And again, another tool that I had that I really didn't know the power of until I was at another conference and somebody was talking about it. I'm like, whoa, hold on. You can use SQL authentication. Okay, let me try this out. So it's become our go-to tool within my group because we administer, we're the system DBA. So We're the ones having to run queries to check for consistency checks and the servers, failed jobs, deploying new code, all of our system stuff. I want to, somebody asked me, hey, what server does database X sit on? I support 5,000 databases. I really couldn't tell you. Anyone else have obscure names for their servers? I mean, my HR database does not sit on a server that says HR. It's all like P for production or Q for QA or D for development. And then if it's Windows, it's got WIN. That's great. The only identifier that it's a database server is it has DBS in the name. Thanks, I'm up to 162 now. Which one? So with this, you go into a window, I have all my servers registered, and I click New Query, select star from sys databases where name equals, sometimes I have to cheat, so we're named light. But I think the database is New World, whatever. So, and then it runs for a little bit because it's connected to all these. It comes back and tells me the dev, the QA, the production, the several number of production where this database got copied. And then that starts the whole cleanup effort. You all know how that goes. But this tool is the only one that I now don't have to remote desktop into different environments and check multiple areas. I got the my firewall guy to open up my subnet to everything. So this tool is our magic. If people think we're brilliant and we're geniuses and we know our entire network, no. We just know how to write a query.
You get the system guy to open up your firewall.
Yeah.
Such a class on that.
Been nice to it.
He is the side guy.
Yeah, I'm not the. So what you do, you end up going to like a happy hour with them, find out which is their favorite beer, and a keg shows up in the back of their truck. Things happen. SQL Doc. So SQL Doc, this is that magic gem. I had no idea the power that I had at my fingertips and have not been using. Automatic full database documentation. So several hands have gone up that you deal with healthcare and financial data. You're regulated like crazy. Every quarter I have some different government agency auditing me for the same things. Outside of them, how many of y'all have to deal with TAs and BAs, business analysts and technical analysts that come up and it's like, I need the schema for this and that. Worse, they say, I need Management Studio to your production database. And you laugh. I know there's some DBA reactions, little clips on that. The company I work for, fortunately, in our name is the letter N-O. So I get to say I put the no in our company name. And so they don't like that when I tell them, no, you can't have this access. I'm like, tell me your requirement. Why do you think you need Management Studio and read access to this database? Oh, I need to be able to script out or document the database. I need the table names, basically the schema stuff. The table names, the column types, the data types, all that kind of stuff. Like, oh, you want that in HTML or Word? What do you mean? How do you want to browse this? And I can give it to you in a Word document, but it's a little bit harder to track down. So if I present it to you like a help file or old Windows HTML page where you click and you navigate down, so then end up having to spin the monitor around and show them a fully documented database in HTML that they can drill down through. What I got to figure out is within this, and maybe somebody today can help me, is how do I remove or uncheck the statement where it will show the create statement? Because it fully documents, including the reconstruction. So a view, a sprite, a table, it's all right there. Indexes, so they had the create statement. So then if they downloaded Express or Developer Edition and they installed it, and I don't know about it, they can go and reconstruct. I guess it doesn't, it still benefits me because they don't have access to production, but yet I've got a copy of this database somewhere. But literally just a few clicks. I'm sure all of us within SQL Server Management Studio have gone through and and done the task and script and scripted out objects and tables and whatnot. When this is installed, it's that simple. Right click, document or SQL doc, a couple of next things, you choose your options, and boom, it's done. It takes minutes. It's a secret weapon. So we'll do this after every major code release and check this into source control. And when these TAs need access, they can just go look at it. When we get audited and they want to know, the information, well, it's right here in this folder. So since we've implemented kind of a methodology and maturity of maintaining doing this, I don't have to deal with so many people so often and say no and be that bad guy. Because my boss likes that I'm the bad guy. But, see, I've been with the same company for 15 years and I'm on my 21st manager. If they come and go, the fact that they like me, the big problem is I have to prove myself over and over and over, which is challenging and exhausting. But I've worked with some of the same people for 15 years. So I don't care that my manager so much likes me as the people that I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis and put up with me for the past 15 years. So these tools have helped me be less of a bad guy in implementing structure and making their life easier. Because they don't want to have to learn Management Studio and struggle with that. I'll show you what this looks like. We have some minutes, so we're at the end for the demos. Now I can probably answer some of your questions regarding some of the how-tos, but again, I use these and I use them often, but I use them for my purpose, and my purpose may not be your purpose. So we'll start with because that's my favorite. So I mentioned about having a document stored procedures. In my shop, we have to put in the date that it was created, the name of the stored procedure, which is, to me, redundant. If I'm altering and looking at the statement, I already know the name of the stored procedure. But for whatever reason, it's got to be included in the low code. So when it was created, who it was for, and just a brief description of what the thing does. That's a lot to have to go and type. So I can tell it TR for Tim Radney. And you see it. Let's see if I can still zoom in. So it brings up this full snippet. So if I say, okay, well, sure, let's go with that. It's all there. So then all I have to do is come in and put the date. I'll come down and start doing my coding. It is. It's awesome. Because, I mean, that's just a few lines, but imagine if you have a bunch of different verbiage that you have to include, like copyright information. I mean, who works for a development shop that you're creating code that is proprietary, copyright, you own an IP, that you have to put those disclaimers in everything that you write? Type in, instead of TRBA, you got it. So what if I start, select, notice I was typing it in lowercase and it went all caps. Select star from, we're in AdventureWorks, so let's do like employee roster. See, I need to turn my IntelliSense off. So I did select star. Notice here it says press tab to expand the wildcard. It doesn't like me coming in and out of the Zoom. So there we have, it brought in the 5 columns without me having to go and type that stuff. And because in the options I said I want all my commas in the beginning versus in the end. Do y'all know the significance of that? Of why it was kind of cool to have them in the front? Anyone ever have to go through and you're working with joins? And you're commenting out, and then so you comment in the front, the commas in the back, and it blows the whole thing up? Yeah, that's never happened to me either. So that kind of helps. Now, is it okay to leave my from on that last line, or does it need to go below? Probably needs to go below. Whatever. For those that don't know, I used a SQL slip command, Control KY, and that's the short key for SQL for the format of SQL. Control K plus Control Y. So imagine you're in here, you're working hard to get this thing done, you've got a bunch of columns and joins, and you're just banging out the code. And all you have to do is come in, Control KY, or use the SQL prompt and tell it format SQL, and now it's all to the liking of your defined standards. So it's kind of cool. So within the options window, I mean, you see, insert selected suggestions into your code when any of the following keys are pressed. I mean, this thing gives you so much granular control on the various things that you can change. A lot of this stuff I have no idea what the significance is because I'm not a developer. For my purpose, changing the commas and how it handles keywords and a few of those things is all I need. But, I mean, with your join conditions, columns with matching data types and columns with matching names, not case sensitive, I mean, based on what it's going to try to start doing. So if you start typing in a join and use the statement, and you're going to join on a particular column, it's going to know that that column's got to exist in these other tables, so it's going to limit and show you the few that have that foreign key relationship. So you just get to pick and choose. I mean, that's brilliant. All right. Some others. I mentioned about SQL Backup Pro with the compression rates and using the encryption. So here, if you've ever worked with SQL Backup Pro in syntax, it's executing the SQL backup. But you see encryption password, isn't that legible? I didn't type M1C3BG. I typed in funlog. Y'all remember that virus? SQL spammer? A few in the room nodded. You got the context. So that was the password that I used to do the backup. But with the restore, there's the, actually I have to specify. I can't use that M1 blah, blah, blah. Now, for the purpose of a previous demo, I blew up AdventureWorks into a large database. It's 2.6 gig. Regular AdventureWorks is like 200 meg. So that's huge for AdventureWorks, right? We sold a ton of bicycles. But going through and looking at the compression rates, so with the level 1 compression, I got almost 60% compression rate. Level 2, I got 70%. Level 3, 72%. I mean, it compressed down from 799 meg to 723. But then level 4 compression, I got 81% compression rate, and the database file went down to 487 meg. But it took almost a minute, about 45 seconds longer than the previous backup. So let's expand that from 2 gig to 20 gig to 200 gig. This backup may run for an extra hour. All right? But I'm getting an additional 10% compression rate. If I'm pushing this thing across a wire, a small pipe, okay, yeah, I might spend an extra hour on my backup, but I may save 4 hours in telco. Which is more significant?
I was going to ask if you knew at where it does the compression, or where in the process it does the compression. Probably kind of native, 80.12, is that it backs up and then compresses.
Do you know that one?
Not all, but it
Right.
gets, and it right. But,
Right.
yeah, so this was, we just set up a system.
Yeah, I think this one is,
I'm pretty sure it compresses as it.
yeah, because it's eating up the CPU through the whole process, not just ramping up at the end. So it's through that, as it's writing, it's compressing. Which also helps if you're backing up across the wire too. Anyone use like data domain or NetApp, some of these deduplication appliances. So this one is just compressing as it's riding across, less data traversing the network as well.
How does native compare to this compression?
So the native is usually around the level 2. And of course, mileage will vary. Got to throw that out there. Based on the your data types and so forth. But for the most part, I have seen the level 2 compression is about what I'll get with SQL Server. And then time-wise, for me, it's been about the same with the level 2. But you can see here, the level 2 took 1 minute and 31, level 3 took 1 minute and 32, and level 4 took 2 minutes and 13 seconds. So not a whole lot of difference between 2 and 3, and as you see, the compression rate is only a 2% gain as well. That level 4, smoked it. One of the added benefits with SQL Backup Pro is you get to choose the number of threads. So if you truly have an awesome maintenance window, and you're on a 12-core machine, give it 11 threads, you can see this significantly decrease as well. So you can fine-tune SQL Backup Pro. Much like with SQL Server, you can get into bucket size and so forth and kind of tweak and tune the available resources. But I haven't seen anyone that has half the compression rate with native SQL Backup to get tighter compression. Maybe out there, but I haven't. Let's take a look at SQL Backup. Coming up, we've got about 15 more minutes. And this is really cool.
One of the nice things about SQL Backup, it's not as important now because SQL Server has made log shipping a standard feature for disaster recovery, but SQL Backup used to provide a means of low-cost log shipping without having to buy the expensive versions.
Yeah, without enterprise. And it still does have the feature built into it, which one of the nice things, I was working with a client who is hosted at like a rack space kind of supplier, but they have another data center where they have a VPN between the two, and they're leveraging SQL Backup Pro for the log shipping between 2 outsourced data center hosting providers to sync the data versus using native log shipping, which I thought was pretty slick because it's got a lot better feature functionality, deployment, restart capabilities than dropping the database and restoring it and resetting up log shipping.
Well, I've been using the SQL Backup log shipping now for 6 years, and
Condolences.
well, I mean, it
works. When it works, it's great.
And Redgate has taken the time to actually build in some nice features into the log shipping program so that if there are any network failures during the log shipping process, it automatically retries, and I rarely have to do anything to keep my DR servers up to date. It's rarely that I have to actually go in and do any manual intervention in the process.
Wait, don't tell the boss. All right, so we'll document at VentureWorks 2012. So, like I said, a few clicks. We're going to right-click. We have document listed as an option. So we'll choose the document. So you can choose, pick and choose what you want to include. So we choose at VentureWorks. You can do security, storage, views, tables. And we'll do the kitchen sink. So we'll say generate documentation. This is the cool feature. Word document, HTML, or you can generate help files. So we'll do HTML. Anybody in the room old enough to remember like Netscape Navigator? Like Internet 1.0? That's what I kind of feel like when I see these. So I mean, it's just a plain Jane web page. You click tables, it lists all the tables. So let's pick one, employee roster. Here's the column types, the correlation of the table, here's the heap. You get it. This is VentureWorks, not my database. And here's the script that I want to exclude somehow. I'll go track somebody down there. And then
document security on the table?
Yeah.
And if you have granted select access to some specific users?
I don't know if that's in here. I mean, it says uses, but it's got DBA listed. So I know you have security from role schemas. I don't know if from table level when it would have to tell you which user has access. So it's kind of neat that when you build this out, you can then turn around and save the package in a folder and put that out on a network share, and your QA and TAs and BAs can have access to that. Your developers even, without having to have access to production or a QA environment. It also helps you with being able to go back and look. Somebody made a change, they didn't tell you, you can go back and look, well, we scripted this out. We've had no change controls come through our departments in the past month, but now we have these differences. Yes, sir.
Yeah, is there any way to add building this documentation to automatic deployment, continuous integration, that sort of stuff? Have this automatically generated with?
I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't thought to ask.
I think there's a command prompt which you can use to automate SQL tasks.
So with the
Command
SQL,
line, you can call it by command line.
Yeah, but you need template, initial template.
Okay. Yeah, because I've seen in here where you can save templates. So if you save it and then have your job that's scripts
Save
it
a
out.
template and then you can use that.
Right. So sweet. See, that's why I like doing this, because then I learn too. So we'll take a look at SQL Data Compare. So with the Pro version, because I know, notice in the beginning I said there's a difference between Standard and Pro. With Pro, you can compare from backup files and source control. With Standard, it's database to database. So since we're working in development, we want to compare our dev to production to see what all changes that we made that we need to queue up and be able to deploy. So let's say compare now. So I quickly did the mapping, and that's going through each table looking to see what data is different. So if you have a large data set, take a lunch, come back, and hopefully be done. Because I mean, it's going through it all. Fortunately, we're using a smaller database, so it doesn't take too terribly long. But again, this tool will show us what data is different, provide it to us in a script that we can turn around and copy paste into another query window and deploy, or we can click at the format wizard here and let it go through and make that change.
Can you pick out which data that you want to alter after the results come back?
I know from the different tables, I mean, all the things that change, you can choose one at a time, whether you can choose row at a time. Anyone know that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You can choose whether you overwrite in your target, whether you overwrite all data or you merge data if there's, some exclusion on what's in the source database and the target database. You can do all sorts of cool stuff with it.
Yeah, so you can see here where it comes back and shows us what it found. Now, if it found multiple rows, I've got a checkbox here that I can check and uncheck to choose what I want to be scripted out to come over. So from here, all I did between the dev and production was added a record for Muhammad Wong Incorporated into the, I think there's a merchant table, or a purchasing vendor table. So we've selected this. We can go through the deployment wizard and script this out, so I have an insert statement to run into production. That's kind of neat. Saves a lot of time from having to go and script out and make sure that everything's correct in their insert statement.
Now, can you build like a package from that to repeat the process? Like, say for example, if you have two different applications that use the same database but different versions, so that you can script it out so that you have one set of tables for one app, another set of tables for the other app, and only do compares against those two sets independently to repeat it or script it?
And I think I followed what you asked, where you have a shared database with different data sets. You can choose which tables that you want to run the comparison against. So if I didn't want to do two whole databases, I just wanted to compare two separate tables, I could absolutely do that.
Right, but take that one step further and create like a save compare job that that you can repeat that without having to rebuild it every time you do the compare.
You got templates. So, with all these tools, when you go to close out, they'll ask if you want to save the package and so forth, so you can create those projects. SQL, so this is Data Compare. We're almost out of time, so SQL Compare is much like this, but it's doing schemas versus actual data. But I want you guys to be able to experience and see SQL Monitor. So SQL Server Central.com. Awesome site. Some guy around here blogs like I'm listening quite often.
Steve, you use this in your session.
Annabelle. So here's live SQL Monitor for SQL Server Central. So we can go in and look at analysis. So what's been going on? So Simple Talk versus SQL Server Central. We'll look at SQL Server Central. You can see, yeah, it's in a high status. It's being used, abused. So all the different databases that are listed, batch requests, compilations, I mean, you name it, it's out here. What alerts are going on? We got some deadlocks happening. It's not just our databases. So this is free. It's out there for y'all to go and play with and poke around within SQL Monitor and see what it's doing. If you don't have it in your shop, they offer a free trial. Check it out. I looked at it a couple of years ago. It was pretty nice what all it could do. Unfortunately, I work for a large bank, and they tend to have these monitoring packages for the whole enterprise that does absolutely next to nothing within SQL Server itself. So I have a small window of what I can collect. So I get CPU and a few things, but fortunately, there's been some updates to the package, so I can finally start hitting some DMDs and whatnot. But this tool does a tremendous amount. But I like looking at it on SQL Server Central and seeing if I can't somehow influence it by going in and querying for different things within the forums that I have it so far.
Can you drill down, let's say, the deadlock to see what is deadlock, what is ASB?
So it gives us the query fragment, processor time, disk queue length.
I noticed that a lot of the times you're at 2 a.m., that's usually when you're doing backups and stuff. Is there a way in the monitoring tool to exclude your maintenance windows like every night?
Absolutely.
Because I don't want to see those stats because I know they're happening every
Right.
night.
Yeah,
And I noticed that they're in there because obviously
That's where you configure the alert, when the alert can trigger. So you
I
still
don't want to be part of the stats at all.
Oh.
Like I don't want to bring down hey, I'm giving an SLA. And my SLA is including my maintenance, my backup, the bad performance during backups or whatever. Is there a way to exclude? Say, hey, look, from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., don't stat anything.
That would be on the basic monitoring.
Especially like response times and things like that.
Right. So you want it to provide a skewed set of results for your manager. I get you.
Nobody does that.
Data doesn't lie. They should provide what.
I think you can change the.
Don't tell your boss.
But I don't think you can actually stop the collection of data.
It's in the SLA, from students, so we're going to have backup.
Yeah, it's just going to collect the data. I mean, the alerts you can change, but regular data.
But I mean, I've seen systems that, a competitor to this, where it's only monitoring during those times. Because what caught us was we were out of the box, it was like 7 to 7, and some crap went down at 9. I'm like, how come you didn't know? Dude, we're a bank, we're up in 7 to 7. That's skewing my results. So we had to change it, to get more drive space, and then, yeah. So that's definitely something, you know, they got some merchants out there with the toolset to ask them, and they can probably dive much deeper into this and show you that you can set those monitors for that aspect. The downside is if you're not monitoring for disk queue length and whatnot, or maybe you just want certain ones off that you won't ping or uptime monitored, so you know you get alerted if it goes down during your maintenance window.
Or even top 10 launch running queries don't exclude giving them,
Right.
or things like that.
And it may be that this is granular enough that you can exclude those within that monitor itself. All right, 11:36, I had y'all 1 minute open. Had to start, a couple minutes late.